Hey there, I've posted timestamps for different parts of the video in the description below for your own reference. So if you need to go to a specific part of the video, feel free to do so. Also, even with my own thorough research, all information shown is still subject to being wrong, so take this video with a grain of salt. With that out of the way, let's get started. Howdy, I'm Last Night, and welcome to my guide to Poly for secondary school students. This video is meant for quite literally anybody coming from secondary school who want to enter Poly, or it could be for those of you who are just exploring your tertiary education options right now. For some background, I just finished my O-levels and I'm entering Poly through EAE. I learned a lot about Poly along the way, so I thought it was a good idea if I was able to share this knowledge and experience with others who intend to join Poly in the future. So what is a Polytechnic? Well, in Singapore, Polytechnic or Poly is a tertiary institute that focuses more on project-based assignments compared to the pen and paper exams found in secondary school and junior college, or better known as JC. While it takes 2 years to get an A-level cert in JC and go to university after that, it takes 3 years to complete a Poly course and get a diploma, which from there you can either go to work or you can move on to university for further studies. If you were to ask me to describe what a Poly is, I would say it is like a pre-university where you pursue a diploma in a certain field of work of your own choosing, just like how you choose what major to pursue in university. Besides that, Polys involve hands-on, applied learning, so you can expect to apply these experiences and knowledge you gained in Poly to working life, not forgetting the many work attachments and internships a student can get depending on their course. As of 2024 and probably onwards, we have 5 Polys in Singapore currently. We have Republic Poly or RP in Woodlands, Nanyang Poly or NYP in Ang Mo Kio, Singapore Poly or SP in Dover, Ngee Poly or NP in Clementi, and Temasek Poly or TP in Tampines. For your info, some of these polys are actually really damn accessible from their respective MRT stations. So, an example is NYP, which can be accessed by Yio Chu Kang MRT and a 5-minute sheltered walk, while NP requires an additional bus from MRT stations like Beauty World or Clementi to get there. It is up to you how far you want to travel every day to these schools, which we will cover in a later section in this video. Moving on, some polys have fast food outlets on campus. SP is a great example because it has many outlets to choose from, such as Subway, McDonald's, KFC, and more. Some polys even have convenience stores like 7-Eleven and Cheers inside. In terms of prices, they are generally cheaper than purchasing the same items from the same stores outside in public. Some of you may have already decided to go to Poly instead of JC, in which case you can skip this upcoming section. But for those of you who are still undecided, let me tell you some reasons why other students, or maybe even you, might want to go to Poly instead of JC. The first thing is that Polys really focus on the idea of specialized learning. Thanks to the number of diplomas out there, you get to actually choose what you want to learn, which gives a lot of freedom. This is extremely good for those of you who know what to do in the future, and very good for students who want to get a head start in the line of work that they are passionate in. The second thing is the benefits you get to reap for university. Depending on your course in Poly and major in uni, some modules in your uni major may get cut because you have already completed them in Poly, which is a luxury Poly students have compared to JC students. That's how some Poly students graduate slightly earlier by only needing to study for 3 to 3.5 years instead of the standard 4 years. There's also the work experience from internships, which is very useful for students, not only for the GPA, but also developing themselves to adapting to working life. Some students may even get offered jobs by companies thanks to their performance during internship. They also promote skills like teamwork and cooperation. Lastly, there is flexibility. In terms of clothing and schedules, most if not all polys do not require uniforms, and some students may start later on some days or may not even have school on that weekday at all. Just remember that this varies from course to course. All in all, the flexibility really hones in on the fact that students get to make the calls for most of their Poly life. So far my points sound pretty good, right? Well, there are some things to take note of before entering Poly, and for one thing is the financials, because Poly courses are much more expensive than JC. If you take a look at the data here, a year in ASR JC, which by the way is a government-funded JC, is about $400 yearly for Singaporean citizens, whereas a course in NYP is about $3.1k annually, so you can see the price jump there. Another thing is that Poly courses are highly dependent on interest and passion. So if you're unsure of what to do in the future, it is quite risky taking a Poly course because you may tend to not be fully committed throughout the whole course, which could lead you to dropping out early and before getting your diploma, which is a waste of time and money. Therefore, it might be more advisable to instead go the JC route. While this may not affect all students, some of you may feel a slight culture shock, and that's because of Poly's free and flexible nature along with its less academically inclined learning style. which can take some time for some of you to get used to. For one, you are expected to be very independent when it comes to managing coursework and time. So don't expect much hand-holding from professors and lecturers like you see in primary school and secondary school with your teachers. Besides that, in Poly, you're graded for nearly everything, from projects to quizzes to class tests, whereas JC is a pen and paper exam at the end of the year. And that's about it for the general overview for Poly. Moving on, let's talk about selecting the course that you want for Poly. So first of all, never ever follow your friends blindly into a course unless you really know what you're doing. In that case, kudos to you. But your Poly course should be tailored to your interest and passion. Keyword here is your. And following another person's dreams is not a really good idea in the long run. By now, you should have an idea of what kind of work you want to do in the future. If you are still unsure though, let me give you some guiding questions that will break down what you are looking for in a course. So, first question, do I have something that I love doing right now? This is basically just your hobby. So, if you like making YouTube videos or TikTok shorts, then maybe mass communication or media production is for you. If you like sciences a lot, you can go towards the School of Applied Sciences for, sciencey courses. Second question, what skills do I have that make me relevant or suitable for the course? So this is very important, especially for EAE, because this ties into aptitude. But let's not get into that now. Say, you can just think of it as, if I'm really cracked at math and science, maybe I should go towards an engineering course, for example. Third question, is this something I can do and tolerate for the long term? Going back to what I said just now, if you can't commit yourself to the course, then it's probably not a good idea to take it up. So just have this in the back of your mind when you're choosing your course. Final question, does this line of work fit my current or future lifestyle that I want to pursue? So maybe you don't really have interest or hobbies or passion, but you're interested in a future where you have a lot of money. Like, who doesn't want money? So in that case, maybe you want to take a look at the job market and see what's earning you a lot of money. But just to be clear, it's not a good idea because the job market is always changing. The demand for jobs is always changing. It's probably going to get worse, but I think you should look at interest instead. Now, you might say that interests change over time, but if you're not going to be able to commit to one thing or you will keep changing interests, then probably go to JC instead. But besides interests, which should be your topmost priority if it isn't clear by now, there are some other considerations that you may want to make when choosing a desired Poly course. The first one is the ease of access, which I think is the second most important thing. This is basically whether you want to travel an hour and above through MRT and bus to your Poly, or do you want to reach Poly ASAP as if you're doing some sort of speed run. In my experience, it is better if you take a nearby Poly because you're going to be traveling to and fro pretty much every day. So if you go for a ride that is quite long in duration, it may be tiring for you mentally and physically. But if you're interested in very long travels, then why not? You can go for it. You should also have a look at what the course entails. I'm talking about your projects, your modules, your specializations, and the internships that you can take up during the course. And that's because there are some courses that are very similar in naming. In NYP, there is a course called Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics, whereas at NP, there is also another course that's pretty much named the exact same thing, Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics, with the only difference being CSF at the end. So be sure to look at the modules and all its details so you know what you're getting yourself into. You can do this by looking at the Poly website itself when you're researching on the courses that you want to take up. Also, if you've got other points or requirements in mind when choosing a course, feel free to use them. The list of points I just gave you is meant to be a starter guide and it's non-exhaustive, so you can add on or remove whatever you want to find the course that is most suitable for you. Now, what happens if you have a field of work in mind but you're not really sure what specialization you want to pursue? Let's say you want to do IT in the future but you're not really sure if you want to do AI and data analytics or you want to do cybersecurity. Well, worry not, because pretty much every Poly will have something called a common program. It is not an actual diploma per se, but it gives you a taste of what each specialization will be for the first semester of year 1 in Poly. From semester 2 onwards, you'll have to choose which specialization you want to pursue depending on interest and aptitude. If I'm not mistaken, lecturers also have a say in it, so don't worry too much when you're still unsure of what to do in the future. Now I'll tell you about a pretty cool website that you can use to find courses. So we have a course finder by MOE. You can just type in MOE CourseFinder in your search bar in your web browser. And we're going to click on the link, just make sure it's the correct link so you don't get scammed, moe.gov.sg. And because it's a Poly video, we're going to go into Polytechnics. And you can see the list of courses on your right, and on the left there is criteria. So you can see which courses that you want to see based on the poly. You can see the JE aggregate sorted by yearly, which we'll get into later. Field of studies, this is basically what the courses are mainly sorted into. We have applied sciences, built environment, business and management, engineering, health and sciences, humanities, information and digital technologies, maritime studies, and finally media and design. You can also see the qualifications such as NA level or N levels and O levels. So let's say I want to go into a course about business in NP. As you can see, it will show you the filters that you've used, the number of courses shown, and you can see there are 8 courses for NP regarding business. So it will tell you the name of the course, the course code, the admission type, or basically how you're going to get in the course, the poly that has the course, and the JE aggregate for the year before. Now we're going to click onto it, and you can see there is the name of the course. It will give you a rough description of the entire course, what was previously stated over here, and the course duration, by the way. There's also a few hyperlinks for you to learn more about the course. This will just lead you to the course on the Poly website itself. After that, you can see the minimum entry requirements, so basically the grades that you need to get to enter the course. Then we have the course module, so this is what you're going to learn in the different years. You also have internship duration, internship time frame, internship period, and you can see the career prospects that you can take up in the future. And we also tell you the different ways you can enter the course. And that wraps up on how to choose your course. So congrats, you should by now have at least one or a few courses in mind by now. But remember, if you're gonna do JAE, you're gonna need at least 12 course selections because the form that is used for JAE requires 12 applications inclusive of both Poly and JC. But don't worry, we'll go through this with a method island later on. Wait, hold on, don't move forward yet. There are some things that you should probably take note of regarding your course. So first of all, the name. I don't think I need to explain this, so next up, course code. This is your alphabet and 2 digits. So for example, just now for cybersecurity and digital forensics, it's C54. This is important because when you get your JE form later on O-level results day itself, assuming you never EAE, you will see a bunch of weird combinations of alphabets and numbers. So I'm just letting you know that these are the course codes for the respective courses in Poly. The codes shown on that form are the courses that you are eligible for. So if you don't see it there, that means you're not eligible for the course itself. Now you'll see that different course codes will have a different alphabet at the front, and that corresponds to the Poly that has the course. So for reference, Nanyang Poly is starting with C, Ngee Poly starts with N, Temasek Poly starts with T, Republic Poly starts with R, Singapore Poly starts with S, and if you're wondering for those that start with V, that is for ITE. Now, besides course codes, there's also the minimum entry requirements or MERs. There's the JE or PFP ranges, commonly known as cutoff points or COPs, and there's the aggregate types of the course. I'll explain all 3 of these later on. Finally, we've got medical requirements. So some students may encounter difficulties in a course due to their medical requirements. So say you have severe color deficiency, you may not be able to partake in a design course. So for more information about this, please look at the Poly website itself and see what it says for the applicants or you guys that are affected by these medical requirements of the courses you're interested in. Alright, with your list of courses in hand, or maybe just that one course you really like, we've reached the part where you're gonna ask yourself, how the hell am I gonna enter the course that I really want in Poly? Now with the new system, or rather revamps to the system by MOE, there's gonna be new terminology such as G1, G2, G3 that some of you may not be too familiar with. So what I'm gonna do for this section is that I'm going to talk about the admission exercises in the old terminology first, so your O-level streams and N-level streams. Then after that, at the end of the section, I'll try translate some of the changes to the new system so that this video has a bit more future-proof, you know? I don't want this video to have a very short expiry date, like in the next few years. So with that out of the way, let's begin. So for a secondary school student to enter Poly, there are 5 admission exercises to do so. The first one is Joint Admission Exercise or JAE, Early Admission Exercise or EAE, Direct Admission Exercise or DAE, Poly Foundation Program or PFP, Direct Entry Scheme to Poly Program or DPP. Now I'ma be real with all of you. I'm not entirely too sure about the whole DAE process, and that's kinda because it's not really relevant for secondary school students. What do I mean by that? Well, you see, DAE is meant for those who have local or overseas qualifications and are not eligible for JE and EAE, aka they don't have an O-level cert. However, I did find a video about DAE in its entirety made 4 years ago, and I think it's still pretty relevant for all of you. So if you want to learn more about DAE, just head to the description below and you'll find a link that links you to the video I just mentioned. Up next, we have DPP, which is basically for N-level students who want to go through ITE and then go to Poly. Essentially how it works is that you have a Poly course mapped to your higher NITEC course in ITE. After completing the 2 years of the course and hitting the minimum GPA, you are then guaranteed a spot in the Poly course that you mapped to in the first place. So to go through this admission exercise, you first have to get your N-level results in December, then apply for the ITE courses you are eligible for through the ITE website. In January, you have to apply for the higher NITEC courses under the DPP based on a combination of both your N-level and O-level results. Then from there, you start ITE and you make your way towards getting the course you want in Poly. With those 2 pathways out of the way, we are only left with JAE, EAE and PFP. For EAE, I am going to go through it in another video because there's a lot of nuances to the process, such as aptitude tests, portfolios, interviews, so on and so forth. So I think it deserves a video of its own. But to summarize what EAE is about, Early Admission Exercise or EAE is for O-level students in Sec 4 and 5 with strong aptitude and interest in the course they want already. Basically, you need to just back up your interest and aptitude by doing projects to be shown to the lecturers via your portfolio. The good thing about EAE is that you don't have to compete with the JAE students once you hit your MERs, because when you hit them and you have the successful EAE offer, you are guaranteed a spot in the Poly course that you want. So while your friends are busy scrambling to choose what course they can apply for, you can just chill because you already have a spot guaranteed for you in Poly. Now we've reached JAE and PFP, which makes up for more than 1/3 of my script actually. So first up, Joint Admission Exercise or JAE is an exercise based almost entirely on academics. So the better you do for O-levels, the lower your points, and the higher your chances are to get into a course you want. And remember your MERs, your COPs, and Aggregate Types? Well, get ready because now's the time to explain them. So first, minimum entry requirements or MERs are basically the grades of subjects you need to get in order to just be eligible for the course you want. Yep, that's right, just. Now each course will have its own set of MERs, so go to the Poly website and look at the requirements that they give for the course. However, there are similar requirements for similar types of courses. So for example, an engineering or technology course will need a pass or C6 in math and science, while on the business side of things, those courses need a pass or C6 in English, math and science. Keep in mind that MERs are directly affected by the aggregate types they are listed under. And speaking of which, aggregate types are like a combination of specific subjects. While GCs use L1R5, which stands for English and 5 relevant subjects, Polys have something called ELR2B2, which stands for English, 2 relevant subjects, and 2 best subjects. There are 4 aggregate types used throughout all Polys, so let me explain them. From prior research, ELR2B2A is used for most communication and social courses where language studies are involved. The MERs for this combination only need a C6 or pass in English and 1 other relevant subjects, which are comprised mostly of humanities subjects, both pure and elective. For ELR2B2B, it is used for business and management studies, so tourism, F&B, etc. The MERs are almost the exact same as ELR2B2A, except now you need a C6 or pass in maths, and POA is now added as an option as a relevant subject. Keep in mind that both of these combinations don't have sciences as their relevant subjects. For ELR2B2C, it is used for pretty much any engineering, technology, math and science related course under the sun. The MERs here only require a C6 or pass in both math and 1 relevant subject. which comprises mostly of any science-related or engineering-related subjects. Just know that humanities don't appear as a relevant subject here. Finally, we reach the last combination, ELR2B2D. It is used for any design-related courses, be it animation, interior, or product design. The MERs here are basically English D7, Math D7, and the relevant subject needing to be AC6. And now, art can be used as that relevant subject. In short, ELR2B2 is made up of English, 2 relevant subjects, one of them being either eMath or AMath, and the other relevant subject being dependent on aggregate type, and 2 best subjects that have the highest grades regardless of the aggregate type used for the course. So to understand what I just said, let me give you an example. If I get an A2 in English, a B4 in eMaths, a B3 in Pure Physics, a B3 in Pure Chemistry, a B4 in Mother Tongue, and a B3 in Combined Humanities, and I'm taking an engineering course where the aggregate type is ELR2B2C, it means that English is used, eMath is used as the first relevant subject, either Pure Physics or Pure Chemistry is used as the second relevant subject, and for the last 2 best subjects can either be the remaining science subject, Mother Tongue, or Combined Humanities subject. Yes, your relevant subjects can be used as part of your best too. So to calculate the best grades possible for ELR2B2C in this case, you will have to use English, eMath, Pure Physics, Pure Chemistry, and Combined Humanities. You then take the number of the grade, so 2 plus 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, and you get a combined L1R4 or rather ELR2B2C score of 15. Also, something to take note of is that you cannot use Higher Mother Tongue and Mother Tongue in the same aggregate computation at the same time, so you have to choose between either one of them. And with all that out of the way, you can finally move forward to JEE Corps, or cutoff points. These are not really requirements, but they are an important indicator when it comes to determining how competitive the course is. The left number is the lowest minimum number of net points, that means after deduction of LEAPS points, someone went into the course with, and the right number is the exact same thing, just now is the highest and maximum number of net points. FYI, the lowest net aggregate score you can get is 3 points because 5 A1 subjects minus 2 CCA points gets you 3 points, while the highest net aggregate score you can get is 26 points because that is the minimum points every poly needs for a course, except for nursing. So to explain how it works, if the cutoff point range is something like 4 to 12, that means someone with an aggregate net score of 4 points, which means after deducting LEAPS points or CCA points, was the lowest to enter the course, while someone with an aggregate net score of 12 points was the highest score the course could admit inside. To tell whether a course is competitive or not, if it has a small low cutoff point range like 3 to 9 net points, it means a lot of people with low scores enter the course, which suggests it is very competitive. My personal recommendation is that you should aim to get your ELR2B2 score to be within the cutoff point range, or to do better than most, try get 1 or 2 points more than the maximum score for that range. Remember that a lower number of points during your O-levels means your chances of getting into a course is higher, and that the JEE cutoff point range is not definite because it changes every year based on the cohort. Now on O-level results day, some of you might be confused on what to do. I mean, the teachers will probably go through with you on what to do and how to apply for your courses and all. But as a preemptive measure, I will try to go through what you will receive on results day and also the general timeline for JEE so you know what to expect. So on O-level results day, you will receive 2 slips of paper, your O-level results slip and your JEE Form A. If you had done EAE successfully, which means you had gotten the course offer and had hit the MERs for your course, the JEE Form A should tell you that you are no longer eligible for JEE because you are already admitted into the poly that you want through EAE. But okay, that's for the EAE applicants. What about the JEE people? Well, then on the form, you will be shown the aggregate scores for JC, Millennia Institute or MI, Poly and ITE. So let's focus on Poly for a sec. You should be able to see the different ELR2B2 combinations with their respective aggregate scores. Then below at roughly the lower half of the form, you will see a list of Poly and ITE courses that you are eligible for. The better you did for O-levels, the more courses should show up in the eligible list. If the course you are looking for is not there, that means you do not meet the MERs for that course. Now, to find the net ELR2B2 score for the course that you're looking for, simply take the aggregate score that is under the aggregate type your course is using, so either A, B, C or D. Then subtract by the number of CCA points you have, which you should be able to find in your secondary school report book. Then tada! You now have your net ELR2B2 score, which will be computed in the MOE system. Then finally, you can take the score you have just calculated and compare it with the last year's cutoff point range for JE for the course you want to see how much of a chance you might stand. As for the JAE timeline, let's start from results day. So when your O-level results are released at the start of January, you will have roughly 5 days to submit your JAE application. If you fail to do this, you will be randomly assigned to a course with available slots and one that is highly likely not within your interest. So this goes without saying, but please submit your JAE applications on time. You can do this by going online to MOE JAE Internet System or JE-IS using SingPass. After submitting, simply wait until the end of January or early February to get the outcome either via the same system, the JE-IS, or SMS, which is done if you provide a mobile phone number while registering. After getting your course results, if you are unhappy with the course you got and want to change it or you are not posted anywhere, you can appeal via the JE Online Appeal Portal. You can appeal for up to 6 Poly or ITE courses as long as you meet the course MERs and the net aggregate for the lowest ranked applicant. This is just the condensed version of it, so please refer to the JE Online Appeal Portal for more detailed procedures and release of appeal results. I'll try to give a link in the description below. Keep in mind that your original posting will be revoked if your appeal is successful in place for the new posting, and vice versa if it is unsuccessful. And that's nearly everything for JE. But before we move on to PFP, I have some additional tips for JE which could be applied elsewhere also, but it's mainly for JE. So first off, start thinking about the courses you want to take as early as you can. Being early means you can be more prepped for what's to come, and being more prepped will mean you will struggle less when deciding your course. You don't have to solidify your plans like straight away, but at least start preparing some sort of draft to have an idea of what course to go for. Another tip I have is for filling out the JE form. So you might remember that I said that there are pretty much 12 slots for your courses in the form. So my teacher suggests this method which I think I should share, which is called the 363 method. So because the courses are sorted out in a priority order, that means the first one will have the highest priority, the first 3 courses that you should put should be the ones that you dream of or really want to get into. Then the 6 middle courses should be the ones that you are okay with getting into. Then the last 3 courses are the ones that you can guarantee a spot in so that you don't get thrown around to a random course in case you can't get into the previous 9 courses. I guess you can also apply this with JC and ITE. And yes, you can get randomly posted somewhere still if you don't get into any of your 12 choices, and that would be mainly because either your aggregate score is not close or good enough compared to the cutoff points, or other students who applied for the course are much better than you, or it could even be both. And that's pretty much the entirety for JE, or at least I hope so, because the script for JE is getting way too long. But unfortunately, we are not done yet because we still have the Polytechnic Foundation Program, or PFP. So what is PFP? PFP in a nutshell kind of functions the same way as JAE, except it is meant for NA-level students who are taking N-levels. So PFP is actually a 1-year program that students go through before actually doing the diploma that they are posted to. So in a way, you can think of it as an alternative to Sec 5. This 1-year program and its curriculum will obviously vary from poly to poly, but from what I've researched, it generally serves as a way to develop a student through different activities like camps and leadership programs, to what I assume is for promoting values like teamwork, cooperation, and all those values that teachers try to spam in their CCE classes. To clear PFP and move on to your diploma of choice, you need to pass a set of modules that generally teach about communication skills and sports wellness. All in all, just approach PFP as a way to enter poly without having to progress 1 more year in secondary school and having to compete with the others in O-levels through JAE and EAE. Now, to actually be eligible for PFP, besides being a normal academic or NA student, you also need to get a raw aggregate score of 12 points. Raw meaning that there is no deduction of DIPS or CCA points. This is to form your ELMAB tree, which can be made up of both O and N level subjects. Now, what's ELMAB tree? Well, it is made up of English, Math, and 3 best subjects of the highest grades possible, ignoring course relevancy. Keep in mind, this is only for getting into the poly, not the actual course itself, because for that, there is a Group 1 and Group 2, which behave exactly the same as aggregate types of ELR2B2 back in JAE. So in Group 1, your English, Math, and 1 relevant subject, generally a science subject, need to be at grade 3 or better, while your other 2 best subjects need to be at grade 4 or better. In Group 2, your English needs to be at grade 2 or better, while Math and 1 relevant subject, which is usually a arts or humanities subject, need to be at grade 3 or better, while your other best 2 subjects need to be grade 4 or better. Keep in mind that the lower the grade number, so 1 and 2, the better it is. To know which group your course is under, please go to the website for the poly and course and just check that. Just like JAE, there's also a net ELMAB tree cutoff point range that serves to be a guide to gauge how competitive the course is. When it comes to applying through PFP, it works pretty similar to JAE. You'll first need to have a Form P, for JAE it was Form A, now PFP is Form P, that has your PFP pin, which can only be obtained if you are eligible for PFP. You will then log into the PFP AE portal using the PFP pin given and submit 5 course choices of your own choosing. After which, you will get your posting results from the PFP AE portal that will tell you whether you are successful in applying. If you are offered, which congrats, remember to accept or reject the course offer by the given time frame. If you want to make an appeal, you can submit 3 course choices through the PFP AE portal. These appeals will be based on merit and availability of slots in the selected courses. If you are successful in your appeal, you have roughly 3 working days to accept or reject the new course offer. After that, the offer will be voided or just straight up cancelled. Your original PFP offer, however, will be voided regardless of whether you actually accept the new PFP offer. If you are instead unsuccessful in your appeal, you can either accept the original PFP offer or reject the original offer and continue with Sec 5 instead. Moving onwards, if you are successful and have accepted a course offer, you can look forward to beginning your 1-year PFP program in April. The timeline compared to JE is again kinda the same, with the only difference being the posting results happening during mid to end of January, so just be on the lookout for that. All in all, PFP is pretty similar to JE, just slightly less complicated to grasp in my opinion. You can actually apply most of your knowledge from the JE section here too. Before we wrap up this section on admission exercises, I did say I will go through and translate the changes done to fit the new G1, G2, G3 system, so here we go. For Sec 1 cohorts in 2024 and beyond, that means they graduate Sec 4 in 2027 and join the Poly intake in 2028, these students are required to have 4 or 5 G3 subjects. G3 is basically the O-level equivalent, and 1 G2 subject if they are only taking 4 G3 subjects instead of 5. That was for JE. For the PFP side of things, which I think has more changes, for the same cohorts I mentioned just now, the subject grade for PFP will be relaxed slightly from G2 grade 3 to G2 grade 4, while still having under a gross aggregate of 12 points for ELMAB3 computed using the G2 subjects, which are basically the NA level equivalent. And starting in the academic year of 2024, the subject grade for PFP will be relaxed from NA level grade 3 to grade 4. So this is pretty much the same change as the previous one, except the naming convention changes from G2 to NA, because this applies for Sec 1 cohorts that come in before 2024. For the fourth change, starting with the 2026 Poly intake, PFP will start taking a cluster-based approach, where students enter 3 broad clusters, the first one being science, the second one being design, engineering and technology, and the third one being humanities, art, media and business, before posting to a specific diploma based on their interest and PFP performance. And finally, but most importantly, G1 will correlate to NT level, G2 will correlate to NA level, and G3 will correlate to O level. I think that's about everything important for poly. So yeah, I guess you can click off the video now because I pretty much expanded all my knowledge. But in case you guys are willing to stay, I do have some recommendations that can probably help you get started in preparing to enter poly. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on to that, shall we? So my first tip for you all is to go for the poly open houses that happen at the start of January every year. And why January, you might ask, is because that's when the O-level results are released. So these polys want to promote their school heavily. That's actually why you see a lot of promotion starting in November by the different polys, because that's when the O-level students actually just finish their exams. Now, these poly open houses in a nutshell are basically showcases of what the poly has to offer. So you can expect seminars, talks, programs and activities throughout the day to get you updated on what goes around in poly. So when you actually go there, either by yourself, with friends, with family, totally up to you, you can see what the school is like. So that's the atmosphere, the facilities, the environment, and the general vibe you get from there. And it's kinda important because you're going to be spending a lot of time in the poly, so if you're in an environment that you're not comfortable or conducive enough to study in, then maybe reconsider your course, your poly choice, or maybe poly entirely, I don't know. And you can also learn about the different courses and CCAs there. And this is especially important because unlike staring at a bright screen, aka the poly website, you can actually ask the lecturers questions because you're going to be free on that day. At least some of them will be, for just the open house day to entertain the parents, the students. So you should take that opportunity and actually ask them before they go back to their usual stuff, teaching, lecturing students and all that. You can also win the different merchandise that they have at the different polys. This isn't going to matter to most of you, but in case you want a memento or some exclusive item from the poly open house, I guess you can win the different plushies and t-shirts that they have for you. And most importantly, have fun. Just enjoy yourself there while also learning about the different polys and courses that they have. Now, as for my second tip, this is going to be a quick one because it's fairly obvious and is mostly directed at EAE students, but basically just get started preparing early for poly. And that's because you want to be stuck now than later. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say you're doing your portfolio or projects for your portfolio. It's better you actually be able to, ask questions earlier so that people who are helping you, like seniors or maybe people at the poly already, they are helping you, and you don't want to be so late near the deadline so that you have time to adjust and perfect it to whatever you like it to be, and also get some progress done first so that you don't have to worry about starting from scratch later on. Now for my third and final tip, it is to look for your teachers or ECG, aka Educational Career Guidance Counselor. I hope I get the acronym right on that one. So for your teachers, it's kind of obvious, they have a bit of knowledge about poly, quite a lot, I don't know, depends on your teachers, so I think you should ask them. For the ECG counselor, in case you aren't familiar with these people, basically their whole job is to decide what you want for your post-secondary education, so your poly, your JC, all that kind of stuff. For my school, we had scheduled checkups with the counsellor that helps with the EAE write-ups and portfolio as well. So you should try to take advantage of this and check whether your school has an ECG counsellor that you can schedule a meeting with. And that about wraps it up for this video. So if you found the video useful, good for you. If you end up sharing this video because you think it's really good for some reason, well, that's totally up to you because I have no control over that. This video took a long time to make because there was a lot of delays in between. Actually, I think it's just because of my procrastination, so nothing much to worry about there. I don't know when I'm gonna get my EAE video out, but all I can promise is that I'll get started on that video as soon as I'm done uploading this one. And with that, thanks for watching and have a good day ahead.